Now, more developments tonight in the quest for equal justice, as Attorney General Bill Barr sat down with our own Martha MacCallum and made one thing clear: the boomerang of justice is in full swing. Take a look.
I think there's some of them very hard to square with the idea that these were just mistakes and sloppiness. Horowitz himself, in his testimony, I think pretty well summed it up, which is this could be, on the one hand, at the very least, gross incompetence. On the other hand, it could also be improper motive. And he was not in a position to make that call, and that's why we have the U.S. Attorney John Durham looking into this. One of the things that I object to is the tack being taken by Comey, which is to suggest that people who are criticizing or trying to get to the bottom of the misconduct are somehow attacking the FBI. I think that's nonsense. We're criticizing and concerned about misconduct by a few actors at the top of the FBI, and they should be criticized if they engaged in serious misconduct.
And just breaking tonight from the New York Times, Durham is scrutinizing ex-CIA Director Brennan's role in Russian interference findings as he continues to investigate the real origins of the Russia probe and the deep state's abuse of power. Joining me now for a reaction is author of the book Witch Hunt, a great book on the topic, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, along with Fox News contributors Tammy Bruce and Sarah Carter. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us tonight. I want to get your reaction because Martha did a wonderful interview. There's more of the interview that'll air tomorrow night on Fox. But what this part we heard from the Attorney General himself, what was one of your big takeaways or thoughts that you had, Sarah, when you heard the Attorney General give that interview?
Well, the Attorney General, William Barr, has been given such a significant task, I mean, a historic task. And we haven't seen this in modern history, modern presidential history. And what I took away from it was when he said, look, this isn't about criticizing the FBI. We know there are remarkable agents doing their best to protect us. But when you have a culture of corruption at the top of the FBI, when there's been obvious malfeasance in the FBI, they need to shed light on it, they need to root it out, and they need to hold people accountable, because this isn't a two-tiered system of justice, and it shouldn't be. And another quick point, Jason, people all over the world are looking to us now to see how we handle this and how our system handles this. And we have a great system if it's allowed to work. And I believe that Durham and Barr are going to make it work, and it's going to be significant, and it's going to reflect who we are as a nation.
No, that's what makes the United States different from every other country on the planet, is we are self-critical, and we do go back and look at these things. Now, Greg, I was struck with some of the specificity and things that he brought up specific in that interview that they are looking at.
Yeah, first of all, from the clip, you could tell he's not buying the BS being peddled by James Comey. None of it. And what struck me most of all was he wondered aloud to Martha, why didn't the FBI end its investigation before Trump ever took office when they learned that the dossier was junk and their investigation of Trump was, quote unquote, falling apart? He also said he's not really buying the Papadopoulos Barr talk as the trigger for the Trump-Russia investigation. He suspects that is a pretext to investigate Trump, which is exactly the argument I made in my book. Look, tonight, if I, having heard that interview, were John Brennan or Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS or Christopher Steele or any of the other actors in the intelligence agencies, I'd have my criminal lawyers on speed dial, because he made it pretty much clear he's going after not just the intel agencies, but private actors.
And this is one of the points, Tammy, that I think the Attorney General is making, is Horowitz can only look at the FBI.
That's right.
But it really, and the FBI insists that this probe started in July of 2016, but really they're going to be looking at what was the precursor and the predicate. That is a much bigger, broader question that there seem to be a lot of indications is above and beyond just the FBI.
Right. And this is, I think, one of the things that's so valuable about this interview with Martha is that for years now, we've only been hearing from one side. We have been literally swamped with the negativity, the one-sidedness, the arguments from the media carrying the Democratic arguments, and the government has to worry about legitimacy at this point, about justice, the rule of law, if it applies to people in the government. Finally, this interview gives us a little bit of insight that Barr may be the person, and we finally have an attorney general who is serious about this, that they're looking beyond the one agent who changed a FISA warrant to get it, to get it passed, that this is much broader than that. And I was particularly struck with when Martha asked him about why, if we were worried about the interference during an election, why wasn't candidate and then President-elect Trump given a defensive briefing about the nature of what Russia was supposed to be doing to this election? And he said he was interested, in fact, in that kind of choice, to not give him a briefing that he may have been a target or the Russians were trying to do this, which tells you the level of corruption involved in this house of cards that they built up.
And Sarah, that comes out in spades when you go and read through Inspector General Horowitz's report. But the question Martha threw to the Attorney General, he does talk about this idea that the defensive briefing is a real question mark.
Well, the defensive briefing is so significant. I've written about this before. I've written about this over a year ago. If they offered a defensive briefing to Hillary Clinton, a detailed defensive briefing, why wouldn't they offer the same type of detailed defensive briefing to President Trump? There can only be one answer if you really think this through with all the evidence that we know. And it's because they wanted to spy on members of the Trump campaign.
Greg,
and if they gave them a detailed defensive briefing, they wouldn't be able to do that.
Greg, we've talked offline here about the lack of a defensive briefing. Where is this going?
Well, it's on page 76, as you reminded me earlier tonight, and I reread it again. Sally Yates, Deputy Attorney General, as well as Obama and the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, all recommended a defensive briefing. Comey didn't do that. Why? It's obvious. Driven by bias, he wanted to spy on the Trump campaign and frame him for a collusion hoax that never existed. If you're looking for bias, and Horowitz couldn't find it, it's right there in plain sight.
And it better be more than Brennan. You can't have just one sacrificial lamb, if you will. You can't focus just on Brennan or even Glenn Simpson. We've got to show the American people that they can trust their government, and we will take these people out if they need to be dealt with within the justice system itself, because it's got to be equal justice for everyone, regardless of who you are.
And let me just say, it's really stupid of Comey to criticize the Attorney General, who holds in his hands the ability to indict and prosecute James Comey. I mean, that is profoundly stupid.
He put out his op-ed and the Washington Post printed it and put it out online before they even had read the Horowitz report. And I'm glad to see the New York Times, by the way. They're about a year behind Hannity, but at least they're trying to catch up. So, they'll get there someday. Maybe. Sarah, Greg, and Tammy, thank you so much for